So what I share with folks is at least a...
Yeah, pardon me, I'm not sure you should give any of this that's confidential to any council members.
Yeah, we don't project multi-years. So what I'm sharing with folks now is at least kind of a jumping off point on a 3-year model. I think one of the things we need tonight is there's a lot that can be done with a 3-year budget. You can project future FT growth, enrollment growth. There's a lot of pieces in here. What I'm giving you tonight really is a 3-year flat budget model that assumes a sense of staff you have today is the staff you have tomorrow. We can go through a little bit. What makes it complicated is because you're in the middle of another budget, which is obviously 18-19, I just took a rough 2.75% for salary increases for next year. So the numbers are not going to match to what you have in your budget books that's being presented. So I tried to roll flat numbers forward, kind of take health insurance, push that forward. So again, kind of just come to what is kind of like a baseline view of things. And again, we can adapt this and change things around. So I think I'll just walk through and we'll talk about questions kind of as we go. So obviously, as I said, I took...
Your starting point, your jumping point, would be 18-19 would be what you proposed in?
No, because there's new FTs in there. It's going to get too murky. So I just thought, again, and this is kind of the point I was saying, we can adapt and change. What I did was I just took a very simple 3-year out, which your current year's your adopted budget you're working from now. I took, you'll see when I go through, 2.75% in salary, 8% in health, again, just to try to roll, because I wanted to get a picture of what years 2 and 3 look like. There's really no way to project that well because, first of all, your year 1 health is in the low side. So I didn't want to project out 4% for 3 years. It is kind of low. So again, let's spin through it, and like I said, we'll talk through a little more on what we maybe there's other stuff we want to talk about. We'll come back again.
I'm going to base this on the concept of the superintendent's budget, not necessarily amending it to a what-if situation.
Yeah, this is a basic.
As if we had no.
This is assuming you know a budget presented already. Right. This is basically a straight move forward 3 years. We're in a sense assuming you don't have a budget submitted to the mayor, all that stuff. This is just a very flat budget. So the budget's a 3-year budget. It assumes flat enrollment growth, no additional staff. I made no retirement projection in there as well. Raises are based on average, not settled contracts. All basic, it's non-salary health insurance accounts are held somewhat flat. You'll see some of the supply accounts when we get farther. I try to hold those flat and not projecting out future, pencil and pen growth and that kind of stuff. We know our budget, the growth is in staff. So taking the salary accounts and again doing kind of some simple multipliers on there. You have a 3.56% increase in the 18-19 budget based on a projection because we had to make an adjustment for change inside your grant structure for the first year. The board knows we had a ton of shifting of people around inside the budget. So your year 1 is going to look a little off. Your 18-19 would be a 2.68% increase, and as well would be your 2021 budget. So those are your gross salary numbers. So you're roughly, again, about 2.2 million, 2.3 million growth in salary, which is, again, pretty traditional, what we've seen in growth. This year, again, it's complicated because of some of the loss in grants that we've seen. That's why our raise line is so high at 3.1 million in the current budget. Employee benefits, if you look at overall trend, trend inflation on health is about 8%. So I took that 8% number. Again, 29 million, 5.7% increase really across the board because health gets complicated. Inside your health accounts is Social Security, which only grows about 2.5%. Your workers' comp is about a 2-3% growth. So it's all in on employee benefits, about 5.7%. And again, I can give you more detail. I can break this down by your account structure you have. Again, it's a question of again where finance wants to go. Your service and fees projection, the bulk of your growth here will be your tutor line. So your 2.47% increase year 1, 2.49 year 2, and 2.5. It assumes no changes in staffing. Again, just that kind of roll it forward. Your contract raises are usually around 2.5 to 2.75% each year.
Is that a valid projection and no increase in special education?
It's not. And again, I understand. I hate the term, but we can make FTE projections going forward. I can build in the high school staffing for the next 3 years. There's a lot to be done inside this. We've always tried to focus a lot of times on what is the, I call start the buses, turn the lights on, day one, September 1, this is what's going to cost us, and just keep the same shares we have. So that's, you're right. I mean, looking across, Mrs. Truth
I will
just.
say we probably grow a couple of tutors a
Yeah.
year, and we really have, really scaled back on kind of how, stringently checking schedules, making sure we're maximizing them, but I would say growth maybe 3 tutors or so a year would be.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a traditional amount of special ed population increase, 1% a year or whatever it is, or yeah.
No, it's again and that's something we can build into another projecting. This is kind of first.
No.
That's something that's hard to predict because
Okay.
we generally increase, I'd say 3, maybe 4, but we in the same week this year I got 2 kids that moved in from district, one significantly disabled with a one-on-one tutor, another who had hearing impairments that needed a tutor to interpret, and so sometimes that does a little bit more, but I would say on
Yes.
average 3 to 4 a year has been a pretty good number.
Your transportation and tutor account, you currently have a 3.5% contract increase for transportation. I did make a small assumption of like a 1.5% growth in special ed tuitions. So you do see about a 3.46% increase year one, 3.48 and 3.5 going forward there. Again, as Kelly knows, your tuition rates, no matter what, like all things, their cost goes up. So they usually put a couple percentage points on even if we keep the current kids we have. We do have issues where we add students like this year. We have picked up some students along the way. So that's at least, again, a kind of this flat line look at those things. Supplies, again, took kind of a small increase in electricity accounts. We've dealt all those up, so 1.26, 1.31, and a 1.29. Again, just heating and electric costs always go up a little bit. Although we've been good at mitigating ours, I got to say, we've increased electricity almost nil. So that's inside supplies. So if you boil the whole thing down to the last page, it's kind of where it all comes down to the brass tacks. You've got a 3.84% increase in your operating budget of $4.9 million. That includes an 8% increase in health, which is, again, the board has run significantly below that. But again, I'm working on at least trend data. 4.4% for year 2 and a 4.6%. So in a sense, your basic operating costs, and coming back from your budget percent to the mayor, is about 3.9 million or so on an ongoing basis. So that, I guess I'm looking for feedback.
Were you reading the numbers you had? I'm on your last page.
Yeah.
First, 1819, we got 3.8.
3.84.
Right, we
Yeah.
got 335.
Yeah.
Now, the only wonder I have is, since this is the first time and out of the box, we maintain that what makes Danbury unique, and based on our prior proposal of $1.8 million that we put in our budget, we proposed to the mayor, is that's predicated on enrollment. Over the course of years, your charts,
Yeah.
it's constantly going up.
Yeah.
So I think it would be misleading, and I understand what you're trying to do, so I'm trying to get it in my own mind.
No, it's,
I think it's misleading. In other words, I look at it from a business point of view, is that if I know I have an issue, a cost,
you got to address it.
that's a historical situation, I may not be able to peg it, but I think I should give some credibility to it in all its aspects, because here we are, as I said, touting that we're unique. We want to make a big drive this year or next year to the public and the legislators in indicating that additional funding is needed us. principally due to, or one of the items
Yes, enrollment.
would be to enrollment, but we're not forecasting in. So I think that, to me, may be consideration to look at it. The other thing is, when we put it in terms of numbers, again, I think we should also be fair because it's a number that reduces the budget, is the retirement. So we've got, historical data
Oh, yeah.
for 10 years, except for that one time we had the buybacks or the buyout.
What happens is in the retirements, just so you know, it skews the numbers because your current operating budget doesn't have the $700,000, because I typically do a negative entry,
Right,
$700,000. And it does make, I could note it like on this page towards the back because it skews the numbers, because when you line up the budget document current year, you have this weird $700,000 entry that doesn't exist in your current budget, so it gets
If you're looking to match,
yeah, it doesn't line up well,
Right,
basically.
right. For first go around, I don't think I'm looking for a line by line match when we're crazy. I think somewhere down the road, if you look at it, I think what we're trying to do here is conceptually try to put something together which demonstrates that, again, as Chief Operating Officer, that we know this year we had X number of dollars. Next year, all things being considered, if we, same levels, we have X plus Y, and it goes up, and incrementally it just goes up, and the facts are, what they are. And so my inclination would be is to
You'd like to see more
add the assumptions.
Yeah, you'd like to see more all
Yeah, but these are driving, I think these costs are, in total, in dollars, are driving numbers. So they're
I mean, we clearly know the high school's going to probably take 4 or so summer FTEs for probably the next couple of years. We know that. Your portables at West Side, as you add those 50 students, you're going to add, in theory, 2 for 6, 2 for 7, 2 for 8. So you clearly have some 3-year FTE growth there happening for you. There's clearly some drivers there we could definitely know. What's complicated is, I want to get this out, is it's hard being between.
Sorry.
It's hard being in between a budget. In other words, if we had a budget that was approved, we hadn't presented the new yet, it does make, unfortunately, kind of like 2 budget versions on the street, which is what I was kind of complicated. But at the same point, we kind of talked about this for a long time.
right. And so for a little while further, to your point, we don't have to, this is a good concept. We don't have to peg it and dot the I and cross the T's with the numbers. We can wait until we get things finalized and a little bit more comfortable on numbers, and then go forward from there. All I'm just saying philosophically is,
Yeah, you want to see
some of the cost drivers in there, I
all
think
beyond.
should be represented, and I think it makes a fair statement.
No, it does. It definitely does. If you include those other costs we've done there. So I even waited. Do we just target the salary and health insurance accounts? Because obviously we know those are the big drivers in the budget itself. It's roughly 75% of your cost. On that level. Yeah, we could definitely do it as more of an all-in, and maybe I could do a little more detail on the salaries and all that. So it's average teacher salary. I think we settled that contract about 2.88. I think the overall step and raise, the whole deal was for I think the second and third year or something like that. So
What I'm trying to get at is look at a snapshot that doesn't, year after year we present it in a snapshot form. This is the budget this year. And historically, our budget, proposed budget, has always increased over prior years because of certain factors that have added to it. So I think if you look at it in the big picture and go 3 years down the road, on the third year off the, hopefully, when you're making up the budget, you can say, okay, my actual budget now to my theoretical budget that I have planned is not too far off. I can't forecast everything exactly, but the main cost drivers I have in there. So anybody looking at this is not going to scratch their head in 19 and 20 and 20 and 21. It's the holy smoke. The Board of Ed's coming up with $9 million, $11 million, $12 million. That's what I'm trying to get to is that, and it supports I think it supports our position is to why we need more funding.
The irony of that whole thing is that our alliance money, which is 8.3, 8.5 million, if any of it is a return to the town, to us or to the town, we are going to be in dire straits. The money there, if you recall, 51% of it has to go to close the achievement gap.
Mhm.
And then the other, they're permitting us to build on programs that we have. It's not just happenstance that we can put anything in there. There's a written application dealing directly with accountability targets. That money stops coming to us, then the only place you're going to get that is going to be from the town. And as I say, your full-day kindergarten, a lot of your programming work that we've added on, that we've been permitted to add on, because people say, well, how did they get by all these years? Well, we were able to write into the money,
Right.
into these grants.
Exactly.
So we're not getting from the town, okay, but we were getting from the lines. And the city's been great about making sure we got that money. They haven't been trying to take that money, but we've been using it for that purpose. And that has been what's frightened me so much. And I lose sleep at night when they were saying this year. One said, that grant is not moving forward. It's come to a sunset after 5 years. But they've had to reinstitute it. My worry is that that money, if it for some reason is cut severely, it's going to impact your 3-year budget unbeknownst anyway.
Sure, but we
So if
don't-
I was doing it as
We're
your
trying to
model,
structure
do
it.
you assume that as a $8.5 million liability if it's not funded?
Well, I mean,
I worry about that.
some districts have taken the view, your priority district grant, which was when I got here about 2.4 million. Now today sits at about $1.7 million. Every year the state has kind of dinged off 10% of the time. We're hearing now the cuts that are getting announced on Thursday, priorities going to get cut by $1 million across the 20 priority school districts. So you're going to lose, give or take, another 50, 75,000, however they calculate it through the mix. Norwalk, for example, took the view the priority grant's going to go away. So they've actually built that into their budgeting models. I mean, we can absorb $1.5 million right now. I don't know how they are. So I think there's a lot of pieces in that. To Sal's point, I mean, at one point we talked about a transition off Alliance.
Right.
I sit here today. Back then, Alliance was $1.7 million. I mean, I'd be lying to you guys. I have no way to transition you guys in a sense to leave the Alliance grant. It's like a nice to have stuff. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, that's your kindergarten. I mean, that right now it's the heart of your district right now where that money sits.
I think to your point, I mean, we could build a doomsday, a scenario budget too, where we say if we didn't have the Alliance, transition to it, then, like you often said, you might as well just close the lights and walk away. But I think your point's well taken in this case here. An assumption can be, again, conversationally here, assumption can, again, it goes part of the known cost, the theoretically known cost drivers as to what if. If we're experiencing a degradation in the Alliance money of X number of dollars, then, build that into here and say, okay, whatever that X number of dollars is, 500,000, 700,000, and build it in here. At least we're accounting for that. We're not saying that we're building a budget based on the Alliance being zero, because, I mean,
So you
that's
want to
crazy.
add in forecasted
That's a different
degradation
ballgame.
of those grants?
Yeah, I think if you have known factors that you're fairly comfortable with, if the
I mean, I view in 5 years the priority grant will go. I mean,
Yeah.
I just think in time they're going to unfortunately phase that away a little bit at a time.
Are there some of the, like Norwalk, you said they're phasing some of the stuff out, but are they experiencing population decrease too?
Norwalk is seeing flat to somewhat. I haven't followed Norwalk as closely.
Sanford's grown, Norwalk, I'm not sure if they.
I mean, it's a lot easier if you're losing population and
They also have a different tax base than you do. I mean, clearly, Norwalk has. They're also net per pupils probably about 70 at seat or so in the state rank. So,
Right.
I think a lot of districts have taken the idea of some of the Alliance money. Stanford did. They put like after school programs in there. I don't want to call it a nice to have. It's a nice to have stuff. We're in a sense here because of funding. We have literally made that's the grease in the wheels. I mean, as Sal and I kind of said, basically I think just about every single one of your kindergarten teachers now sits inside your Alliance district grant. We've shifted that much staff around again to make the budget work and not go through catastrophic cuts.
Is this salary and benefits projection based upon having the same amount of teachers through this?
Same amount of teachers.
So if we do need to put more full-time teachers on because of population.
Correct.
These are gonna, like you
And
said,
that's
these
the
are
point
gonna
I'm trying to
skew
make.
down.
You know, to make it more, I mean, I use the 8% number for health, which clearly is about $2 million or so an increase, that drives up the amount. But again, your 3.7 with this year was an abnormally low year. I mean, that's a low renewal. So it's,
That would be my opinion, and, you know, respecting Sal's conversation here, the trend of the money. You know, I don't want to be here in 5 years, you know, God forbid that we lose that alliance money, you know, I'd be shorter than what I am, you know, now, and in terms of trying to deal with that situation. But if the trend is the alliance will be taken away, then we should build in here certain, you know, adjustments for it, if possible.
yeah, I guess I want to be mindful they don't. One of the things I always, I guess in my own mind, to be very honest with this, I've always been mindful of coming out with some of those where it winds up, board seeks $15 million in the next 3 years. I'm always mindful of like it's in big numbers, because I could easily, you know, build a transition plan for $2 million gets picked up every year into the alliance, and you're gonna have a budget number that's gonna be, you know,
You know,
astronomical.
and my feeling is you don't stick your head in the sand.
No,
You know, I mean, he's got to run, he's going to be here for a number of years. He's got to run this district for a number of years. I'm sure in the back of his mind, he understands all that we're talking about. It's not used for publicity stuff to say the board needs that, but I think it gives us, and gives board members an idea as to what direction we're going in. And I think it also supports our position.
Would it behoove to take this on a two-prong, or have really like a staffing exhibit, not necessarily costing it, but kind of just where we see some future growth? I mean, high school is very clear on where we're going there. I think we have a good idea, obviously, at West Side. We've got some good information on, as Kelly said, with some of the sped numbers. So, I mean, maybe kind of take this two ways, have a 3-year forecasting model for some of your actual staffing growth that you're going to be here to foresee.
Just as a quick question too, I've never even thought of it. Is there a projection on normal growth? Is it normally most of our growth occurs in elementary schools, and then that bubble follows through, or do we get kind of an even growth throughout all
You've got a
grades?
spill-up effect happening now. Your current K-5 is just around 900 or
Right.
so. Your 6-12, we're in the 8s, like low 8s or so. So you're starting to see this spill up. And then you've got, the problem is your new high water mark, you're not growing, you're staying high. So you're like 800, 825.
There's no blue.
Yeah, there's
There's a follow through.
Yeah.
Right.
It's gone like this and it's staying like that.
Yeah.
Is what's happening to us. So the classes that are, you know, as Joe said, that had 650 are now 900.
So I mean, you know, you take the high school, you could, in years from now, 900 in a grade, you could be 3,600 up there. I mean, you know, so that's
Which was
where,
the projection.
yeah, which is where we look at the
And
middle
are we
schools.
seeing more continual growth down underneath in the elementaries? Is that where, you know, more people are moving in with younger kids? Or
I'm
do we
not
kind of have a
seeing,
broad
I'm
spread
not
on that?
seeing us piercing over that like 925 number. I haven't seen any upward ticks there. I could actually peek just on power schools quick. I haven't seen any big growth there. At least getting high.
While you're doing that,
Yeah.
Pat, I don't want to tie up the next meeting.
Yeah.
Just quickly to close,
Well-
in summary, I'd like,
Before we go,
I wanted to ask the opinions of the committee member, and then just quickly for the other two board members that are here, if you could just.
No, that's fine. I mean, mainly the main reason why I'm interested in this 3-year budget is, you know, to look at kind of 3 objectives and just forecast that down the road. I mean, obviously, we're dealing with enrollment growth in the district. It's something that a lot of other districts aren't dealing with. And I think, you know, a part of this 3-year budget is to, you know, forecast the enrollment growth, you know, as best as we can, and the costs associated with that. The other part, another objective I have is that we look at, you know, new programs and additions in the district, and we implement that into a 3-year budget, because, you know, if we wanted to, I know there's some of these intervention programs that we've been utilizing, we've had to cut back at times, and you know, obviously there's a lot more intervention that we would like to do in the elementary school. If it's our intention to roll that out, you know, more than we currently have, you know, we need to kind of set set some sort of expectations as to how we're going to do that, because we can't, turn to the city or to the state, next, in 1 year and be like, all right, well, we need an additional $5 million for this program, and be like, well, good luck.
Almost like a 3-year working capital plan, but for staff, basically.
For staff, for program, whatever it might be. So I mean, and then also for the addition, I mean, we built this new addition at Danbury High School. I mean, we're trying to incorporate that into our budget, but it's tough sometimes it's tough for them to wrap their heads around, when we put in West Side and we rolled out that program, we're gonna put the modulars at West Side, hopefully, and rolling out that program, people need to understand and be prepared,
What's on the horizon.
for what's on the horizon. So I mean, I know that's part of enrollment growth, but that's also part of, new programs, including the intervention programs, forever planning and going to full one-to-one, right?
Yeah.
In terms of technology, we need to be able to implement that according to a plan rather than showing up one day and saying, hey, this is what we need. And then the last thing is, we really need to figure out what an adequate funding target would be for our district. And we need to plan for that accordingly, because every year we're getting less and less money, so that when we propose this budget to the city and when we're looking for money at the state level, this gap keeps getting larger and larger, and so people look at us like we're crazier and crazier, when in all reality it's, this is where we're at, this is what we need. Just because you gave us less money 1 year doesn't change the fact that we need more than we've been given. So those are kind of the 3 objectives I'm really looking for in terms of a long-term budget, is incorporating those things. I know it makes your life very difficult.
No, it doesn't, frankly. Because I sat at my desk when I was doing this the other night, and I said, because a direction is not a bad thing. And I think having a 3-year model for at least some of the futuristic staff pieces is not a bad thing. That in front of the board is, just a regular item in a sense. Yeah, I could definitely recost this, a little more detail, and we could then build in at least some of the DHS enrollment there, the West Side staffing. I could take a little more. Yeah, we could definitely do it. And I'll try to find a way to get their retirement numbers so at least it looks a little more, it balances in there.
Farley, and Rachel, yeah.
My only suggestion was exactly what Fred said. Try to build in a bit more of the growth numbers and like you just mentioned, some of the projections of the retirement cost.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. We've been in survival. I mean, that's the challenge that this board faces every year. I mean, I think that's
But I appreciate you doing this.
Well,
I think, Joe, you have to put in the givens, and I think, as Dick was been given that we have continued access to the Alliance Auto
Yeah,
Title
you
One,
put a qualifier.
those givens need to be out there so we can speak to them and not incorporate it into the anticipated cost.
I
To
think
let people know we're relying on it.
in my mind, I'm going to do the staffing piece as a one-sheet table, just a table diagram on where folks are going as far as growth and program. I think that's easy.
Mrs. Cooper?
I agree with Fred and I agree with Mr. Flowers. And since I've been on the board, we've always looked at a 1 year. So this way we can look at 3 years from there and get at least some type of idea of what we're going to be needing in those 3 years, whether we be here or not. So, it's not going to hurt us to look at the numbers and see where we're going, because we know the city's not going to give us what we asked them for.
Rachel? Okay. This is a great starting point.
Yeah,
I think.
I never stand for a draft on things, but I'm going to say it enough time. It really is.
Before you go ahead and get too
rough
involved in the numbers, I think what's necessary is a dialogue. You want a brainstorming session, I volunteer myself. If you have another, finance committee just as a brainstorming session to put things down and do a whole lot of what if, where maybe not so much pressed for time. It might be good, rather than send you off, the last thing I want to do with your workload is send you off in 100 different directions.
Yeah.
So if we can have a conversation and nail down certain things, then I think that would be a good starting point. So, if that's acceptable, we can hold another dialogue for a brainstorming session. For another run before he starts putting, pen to paper.
Sure.
Okay. All right. I thank everybody for attending. I'm going to conclude and ask for. I guess I need a vote to call this meeting to end.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay. So meeting's adjourned.
We've taken attendance. everybody taking?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I had it. So,
For this session, should we have the councilman?
Yeah, if you guys want to come up and stand around the table, so we have a dialogue.
Just one bite.
Fred, there you go.
Fill in the seats, man.
Good to see you. Hey, Phil.
Anyone put it on my number? Yeah.
You guys can fill in the seats. Yeah, let me do that. Square. Yeah. Really good set. Let's hold these in. You guys can sit in here.
Sorry, just kidding.
I'm gonna close you in.
Oh, yeah, no, no, I only get help.
What's up? Lisa Borgioni is my name.
Wow, we're here. $20 a seat.
We're gonna close that budget gap. Yeah. And then are we supposed to be, are we done with this?
No, this is. I'm sure the meeting is. I did a very light PowerPoint if you want to share that. I mean, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just open the meeting, Joe, and kind of hand it to you, and then we can just have a discussion, I think.
Just disclosure, we were gonna have this tape tonight, and no one was available, but our media folks got here, and that camera's on, live, all the time. All right, and they're gonna take it, so I'm just letting you know. The groups there wanna come alongside if you, okay, you're good up there.
I don't want to say
I don't know if Rachel, if you want, if you're gonna take any notes. Yeah. Right, just a workshop. Do we need to have a,
No, I think we're going to get back tomorrow.
People usually have a 10
Okay. I don't even know if we're running it, so we're running it in the meeting or calling it?
Yeah, we go ahead, the way it's
Right.
the board's working, all the Q and A's, and then you invite them.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, so we'll call the meeting to order at 6:10. And this is gonna be a workshop with the council members, and Joe Martino is gonna give us some numbers. And I think we're just gonna try and get a dialogue. Mr. Janelli gave me some ideas from what his thoughts were on this, that we just wanna look at the budget and get some back and forth with you guys. And did you want to do your PowerPoint
I mean,
off the bat?
just for the council, first, thank you guys for coming tonight. Appreciate it. I know it's another night. I did a kind of a light PowerPoint. You guys know where we sit. I think that the council's kind of aware of some of the enrollment growth issues, but I think we'll just do kind of a quick, just kind of very high level on things. Obviously, our mission and belief statements, we know kids are our first priority, that we do. We have high expectations for all students and accountability. I'd be reminiscent, as the council knows too, from being on the city side, the state budget concerns are ongoing and feel like never ending. We've seen our share cuts even during mid-year and mid-session. We've got the Alliance District grant for $250,000, our priority grant for $350,000, and these are all after the budget's been adopted. And again, the city's sharing their own, what I call mid-year rescissions. Our teacher mentoring program, which is $40,000, but that was an unfunded mandate the state handed down to us. So it's $500 per teacher for teacher training. The state said, we're not going to give you the money, but you still have to run the program and still pay the teachers. So that's an unfunded thing that comes back to us. And we just learned now that our priority grants can get reduced by about another $100,000, or a magnet by another $150,000. One of the bright spots is we do see some increase in state aid from the state. It's a little murky on what. The governor's budget had $975,000 in its 2-year budget. There is about $1.5 million, at least in one version, but I mean, even the council knows there's about 30 different versions that come out between now and May. Budget cost and containment. We on the board side have done quite a big effort in a lot of areas. Obviously, a big area of cost is special ed. We've done a lot of low-incident special ed school-based programs there to try to reduce costs, keep kids in district and not pay a large out-of-district placement cost. At times, an out-of-district place can be $150,000. Therefore, we've done some building-based programs that we can put additional students in and curb some of that cost. We've looked at ways to try to reallocate some of our substitute teacher dollars to better impact instruction. Our transportation system, we switched to an all-propane fleet there. It's now in our second year of that phase-in, so we all propane in this next budget. Our lighting and heating upgrades, which the city's taken part in as well, has been a big thing. Our consolidation of purchasing, and obviously our advocacy at the state. Dr. Sal and I are heading up, and Rachel tomorrow to testify up in Hartford on behalf of the state budget. Our enrollment trends, again, not a new graph. Danbury, good and bad news is we're bucking the trend. I mean, we really are. We are seeing a large number of growth in Danbury. Our trend continues to move up, where most of the state and our surrounding schools are declining. This is kind of a snapshot that we did this year, which shows your current enrollment from 2001 to 2017. I mean, just an amazing. I mean, if you're a statistician, I mean, the growth here is incredible. Where other districts are really inverting this curve. I mean, to think of you were like 9,500 students in 2002, and you now sit at 11,450 today. It's just amazing to me. Your enrollment growth, this is again, we did a study with McLone Room a couple of years ago. Again, we are still outpacing a lot of the demographers' data, and we do continue to see that on all fronts. Our current projection was supposed to be 11,373, and we're, as you saw in the last graph, we're already ahead of that. Our subgroups, I mean, this is obviously our population demographic. I mean, obviously, we do show growth in our English language learners, our special ed population somewhat, and also our free and reduced lunch numbers were 58%. Those aren't the only cost drivers, but obviously they do add to cost inside the district. And then, just kind of quickly before we open it up for bigger discussion, I just did kind of, again, broad brush as far as some of our needs. Again, no secret to the council folks, the addition to the high school, we're looking at approximately 5 new FTEs there. New custodians, including new wing, is 3 FTEs there. The current district number for custodian square footage in the high school is like 40,000 square feet a man. The industry standard is 18,000. So we are, there's no way we could deal with the addition in the existing staff. The new addition is 60,000 square feet alone. So even if we use that number with the 3, we're still, we're going to be well above the industry standard there. The portable classrooms, we do have 2 additional FTEs there for the new addition at Westside. Continued growth in our special education area, including speech and language. We do see high caseload numbers there. We're looking for a drug and alcohol specialist to service some of our higher needs students. Restoring our math and literacy coaches and our paraprofessionals to a cut of last year's budget. Health insurance, obviously, I'll continue to highlight this. I mean, the overall health is 3.5% on a renewal. We partnered, like 5 years ago now with the city on health insurance, and I'll say it's the greatest thing we've ever done as far as controlling costs. 3.5%, my first year we're 18% on a renewal, so I mean, that's been phenomenal. So just $1 million, and it's still $1 million, not zero, but it's far better than it was. So again, kind of just a broad brush. So total budget increase ask is $6.9 million. The operational increase, kind of the base budget, as I call it, is 4.3, and the enrollment growth issues is 2.6 overall. I guess I'll kick it back to the chair and open up for questions and dialogue.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming, and that's basically our stuff in a nutshell. And we know that with obviously, as much as we'd love to sit back and ask you guys to fill in all the gaps that we're lacking from the state and everything else, these are basically the numbers. I mean, they're not without keeping the staff that we've lost and losing more staff down the road. We have issues, and wanted to see what any of you guys thought of these numbers. Thank you for the rollout too, Jay. But that's pretty much the picture. It's not like anything that's coming in superfluous. Yes, sir.
11,451 in 2017.
Yeah.
Okay. What for 18 and 19?
We've been growing on average about 1% to 1.5% a year. So we add roughly about 150 students every year. And that's been a pretty constant trend. We've had some years that's grown 200, but I mean, it's been steady growth. I mean, the city's got some development going on. We do see growth coming from the west side. The exit 2 corridor over there, definitely there's some coming in there. You know,
You're talking about the new townhomes and the two.
yeah, I want to say that's Old Ridgeway Road over on that side. We've seen some increase there. We actually had a bus up there for the high school, so we do see growth coming from that pocket of the city.
We had to add another bus there too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We see growth in the downtown some. Your Ellsworth Avenue School, for example, was built originally for about $350. They're about $480 right now. And we've combined spaces, you know, split up classrooms. We've done. I mean, the city thankfully gives 18 classrooms. 4 or 5 years ago, we've probably split and divided probably another 20, I would say, inside at the elementary tier alone. Your middle schools now are growing back again. They're pushing back with projections going back to 1,000, and that was kind of a ugly number no one wanted to go through, which is why we looked at the portables up the west side as at least a decent economical option to do up there.
That's both, Joe?
Right now, the continued trend is the middle schools will get, so you'll be 1,000 each and probably another 700 or so west side. So the goal is to try to at least alleviate some of those numbers to get them probably to 950 or 925 or so.
That was the projection too, with the 6 or 8 portables at West Side, was to, if we got 8 portables there and get state funding for it and everything else, that's a big number, at least a minimum of 60, we're hoping for at least 63% reimbursal. 8 units there would be about 200 students. That would be kind of channeled away from the overpopulation at Broadview and Rogers Park, trying to keep us under the 1,000 number there. Mr. Towers.
Yeah, I'm interested in what the average is of number of students per classroom, because, you know, you get the total numbers, but how is this all affected?
It does vary, but it
stay
is.
within the guidelines that.
Well, no, we've had in some cases exceed the guidelines. In other cases, you know, it could be below it. But, you know, when we reduce faculty and staff, what you're seeing is the only place that we can do anything about it is to increase numbers in the classroom. You know, we can't go sell some other widgets, right? You know that. So we just increase the number of kids in the classroom. We have some that are 26, 27. We have some that are 22. There's a few schools that might have, because the situation is 19, because the classroom is smaller, that we had to put kids in, which bubbles out the rest. But in general, I would say our numbers are higher than we like them to be. And we have those guidelines, and we can't follow them all the time, at all. The impact, I think the board's beginning to get some emails from parents about the high school keeping, you know, our high school's comprehensive, and everybody loves the ability to take any course that you want. Well, at some point, you know, you can't offer them every year, and we're having that problem at certain levels. And we may have to reduce them because there are programs that we can't continue, or have to offer them on a, you know, an alternate year basis or something. So those are the things that were ways that we need to get around. When what gets me all the time is, and your part is, you know, we go and ask for money, we don't get it, and you say, well, how are you doing it? Well, a lot of them are doing it on the backs of the teachers, in terms of what they contribute. Increase class sizes, and what's happening now with SPED, as you know, we're increasing the number of kids that are needing support because they can't get it in the classroom. We're seeing an increase in referral rates because that's where kids can get some added help. So, you know, all of that is coming to bear now in terms of our lack of resources.
Mr. General.
You know, a couple of 3 times, speaking to the issue of enrollment, a couple of 3 times during the course of the year, Danbury gets some very favorable publicity as to, you know, a great place to live. So, you know, I often wonder how much this, you know, adds to people, you know, waking their eyes and say, let me move to Danbury. Just in the last 2 weeks, I think there was an article that came out that indicated that Danbury is the best city in the state of Connecticut to live. Also, it's the most expensive, but you know, this is great publicity. It's not saying it's the worst and the high crime ridden, but you know, I wonder with this positive publicity, it's going to add to the growth. So, it's good for us to have the publicity, but sometimes that movement, if it drives people here, and also relative to other areas, it's affordable to live, it, has a cost impact on us coming in to educate the kids that are coming in here. So it's nice that the city has done a great job in making it a safe and a wonderful city to live. There are costs associated with that.
Just to kind of shoot off of what you're saying, Rich, we're sort of victims of our own success. And that comes out when you talk about how much money you spend per student. Since they froze the ECS money, what happens is the surrounding communities who have a declining population are still getting the same amount of money, which raises the amount of money that they appear to get, which they do. And Danbury, with an expanding population, getting the same ECS money drives that amount of money down.
Sure does.
So the $2 million that you talked about, Joe, as far as ECS, it comes out between adult education and ECS. The $2 million is really nowhere near the amount of money that we need.
Should be 40, I mean, your fair share should be 40 million. I mean, I think we all know that.
Yeah, to put us, yeah.
And on the city side, we're short probably $2.5, $3 million down.
Well aware, current year.
To supplement a growing population in the school. So our job is to balance that out and to figure out what we can. We've always had a good working relationship with the board and with its administration as well. And that's what we have to do now, is try to figure out how we can do more with less because of the state condition. And when you compare it against some of the other communities, I was looking on that scale of how much actually taxpayers in Danbury support local education versus some of the surrounding communities. We support, coming from the tax base, about 80% of the school board's budget, whereas surrounding communities are averaging about 50%. So that puts the additional burden on us. So we're here, I'm here to listen and find out, and we'll work through it and try to do the best we can.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we were saying.
Our argument, and we met with the legislators last week, and that's been Mark's kind of position, and we all agreed with it. There's about 4 cities, maybe 5, that are growing, that if the state as a whole doesn't have the wherewithal to solve all of its ills, that it focus particularly on the schools, districts that are growing with a needy population, and maybe, explicitly cut out grants and whatever for those schools to assist with the local tax situation. Because you're right, 80 cents on a dollar is being raised by our own people because we're getting less from the state. And Stanford and Bridgeport, New Haven, one of the experiencing the same thing. So that's what we're going to testify about in terms of focusing that. But the fact still remains that these kids are coming in the doors, and class sizes are almost at their zenith in a lot of ways. The identification of kids are much needier with a free reduced population. That some schools are at 90%. Our average is now 53%, and that is taking. Those are our kids in Danburyans that need that assistance. So find that sweet spot. And I know we've talked with the city. There's excess cost that comes to the city with unknown special ed that in the past they've helped us with, and that's a good thing in terms of unanticipated expenditures. So that's a way of getting some of it. I think we can look at the insurance model that we have. That we've had some good experiences to allow us to be a little more flexible in the amounts, knowing that we may have to do some draw. But I think it is a collaboration of saying, okay, we know what the business is, we may have to do it a little bit differently in order to move ahead. And that's where, unless the city delivers everything, the state steps up and they go to surrounding towns and, do this while they increase some others that are needy. And that was the governor's plan this year. You saw that.
Right.
That went nowhere. And Mark's idea is just let's focus on a small group to see if we can engender more resources. So that's sort of what we're looking at.
Yeah, I went through that list and I took similar communities as us and they're frozen, their population is dropping, but they're frozen to their ECS money and they're doing great. So we can't get their votes to support.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. We've got, you know, the legislature's.
We've got a lot more towns losing population that don't want to give up the money than, they got a lot of votes. I was gonna reiterate before, when Joe said $40 million that we're short, when we ran those numbers, basically 40 million still leaves us almost $5 million short of hitting the mid mark, the 50 percentile mark. I mean, that's how far below. If we got 44, 45 million, we'd only be at the halfway point in state, in funding for the school. So it's just, we're so far behind. It's unbelievable.
I still refer back, I know it's a hot button issue, but some of that cost could be, perhaps you could look into distance learning and expand on that, where it's less bricks and mortar and it's less teachers as well, and labor-wise. There was also, on the city side, we, as you know, the Bloom-Shapiro report in 2015 outlined several areas where IT, personnel, things of that nature, where perhaps we could share instead of duplicating, having redundant services, we could look into savings, because in the long term, the state of Connecticut is not getting better overnight. They didn't get worse, bad overnight, and they're not going to get better overnight. So we have to make some long-term plans as to how we're going to make up that delta. And year to year, it gets more difficult.
Well, let's live with that for a second, because I was intimately involved in that conversation, and we looked at the technology, and what did we find if they would support us in terms of the numbers? Because, it made sense to us, and we started drilling down.
One, we have a fully unionized IT department, and two, we're grossly understaffed in our department. I think we haven't looked, like custodials looked at, and same thing, we're grossly understaffed, and outside we have to add. We haven't looked at lately, but I mean, that's at least where a lot of that data is.
Yeah, we didn't see a symbiotic relationship there that would pay off for both of us. But with that said, there's times they work together, they do training, we share things whenever we can. That's been a good relationship. Personnel, if you look at our personnel department, she's also the lawyer, and I know they work with your department, and they drill down, they negotiate, they do things together. So I think we found some common areas where it made some sense, purchasing and things like that, as best we can. I didn't see a lot in the Shapiro work that I can really say to you, looking at it and say, you know what, we can operationalize something meaningfully, other than just say we're doing something. I just didn't see anything that came out of it at that time.
Well, I can only, we paid for them to go out.
Oh, I know. No, they sat down with us and we went over it seriously with them, and we talked about things that we can and couldn't do, and we came up with ideas of working together and bidding together and work with the town. But those are the kinds of things that we came in. The trouble is, you have a district that's going like this and support going like this, and a town that's going like this, and an infrastructure that's going up as well without support. So you put the two together, that they commiserate. There's not enough. There's just not enough to do it.
We rely on the grand list. I mean, we can reach a.
That's all you have, I mean, yeah.
We can't put the load on the taxpayers anymore when they're carrying a heavy load as it is. That becomes counterproductive.
Has the grand list gone up this year, or where is it?
Well, we're looking at the.
going to
reval.
Yeah.
Reval, yeah.
So just a reval.
I think most of it's going. I got mine.
Revalue probably as normal, expect.
Yeah.
You're gonna, it's gonna go a little bit. That's, it's an opportunity to reshuffle the deck. But the rest of it, as far as new construction, new things, that's the only money we have. The city is getting hit pretty hard by the state. We're losing millions, and the only place that we have any kind of flexibility is whatever we can get in the way of the grand list, and that's, the cupboard is bare after that, so.
So just in regards to, one of your points, distance learning, and I think that's a very good idea, and, clearly there's no way to replace, teachers and what teachers mean for their students, so it wouldn't be necessarily, trying to supplant like their support and what they're bringing to the table. But even for something like this, that's learning and implementing something like that, you have districts across the state that are shifting over to full one-to-one, meaning every student has like their own laptop or their own iPad to be able to do some of these things and to help the teachers help the teachers teach the students and move to mastery-based learning and things like that. But even with something like that, it requires an investment in technology for these students, and so maybe in the long run there are cost savings and something like that. I mean, I'm sure there are, but in the short run we need an investment in that sort of technology in order to accomplish those things. So that's another problem that we have. It's we've been cutting back, and I haven't been here all that long. We've been cutting back in so many different aspects of student learning, increasing population sizes in the classrooms, and all that it's become tough to make the gains that we need to, and maybe to find new opportunities for cost savings, because students and teachers and administrators are already operating at a bare minimum, so there's no way to kind of accomplish some of those things. But I like that idea though, and I think it's a very valid.
It's not a case in distance learning, as I said, it's not one shoe fits all, and I still believe in interfacing people, but some of the higher grades in the high school where they're in their senior year and maybe taking some AP courses or something like that, they could be going 3 days a week and using the rest of it on a computer. They're doing it in many states and have been doing it, and most people today, a lot of average families, can't afford the cost of college any longer, and they're doing it at home. Okay, they're doing it distance learning. So it's something that takes long-term planning, and it's going to be an expense to introduce, but in the long term, it's going to save money, and you can't keep on building buildings and supporting the tax base the way it is. This doesn't happen. So look at these things, and with an open mind, and you have to sometimes say, well, that didn't work before, and we see objections to it, but let's take a closer look and see if we can't offset some of our costs.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that some people brought up too is it's nice to get, West Side's got some very nice technology and things like that, and but sometimes when you look at having a 58% population on free and reduced lunch, and try and figure out how to implement people to work off of computers if they don't have them. A lot of the kids come to school and get supplied with computers at school, but they don't get to bring them home. So sometimes, I think like Fred brought up there too, it's the initial implementation, we just don't have the funds to start up a lot of these things, at this point. Anyway, Mr. Giannelli.
And to the members of the council, certainly we appreciate you being here, but the purpose here was not to bore you with a budget presentation with a whole bunch of numbers, because we've done that, we have a time that we're going to do that. The thing was to have engaged was a dialogue, just as we're doing now, because that's what happens, is if you have a dialogue and you have different opinions, something may come out of that. And it brings us closer together in terms of forming a relationship as to a common interest to how to solve a particular problem. The basic fact is as it is, and probably as it will be, the city of Danbury cannot afford to fund the education, for the cost of the education. We're not looking for the residents to foot that burden. That's horrendous. And to my colleague Fred there, who made a very valid point, in that the budget that we propose is not a budget that moves us ahead. It's what we refer to as a maintenance budget. It doesn't include any new sophisticated curriculums or programs. We understand that because we don't want to add insult to injury in terms of these particular costs. So maybe in a multi-year budget, that may be part of the cost that we'll associate in there, but that's a subject for a different time. What I think very strongly is that we have to do, with the understanding that the council people understand some of the drivers and the issues that are creating the cost for us, and later on the dollars that are associated with that. We have to unite and get the city of Danbury and all the stakeholders, that is the legislative, the officials, students and everybody else that's a stakeholder in this city to go to Hartford, because that's the only place where we're going to make up this differential. You know, as we keep talking about, we have this, you know, we're lucky to have this position. You know, we're this 169th, we're the lowest. A couple of years ago, we were at 167 or 163, and a $12,700 average cost versus the first city that was up there with $36,000. It is totally disproportionate and insane. But Danbury, we know Danbury is getting shortchanged. So we as a city of 90,000 people have to be educated as to what these issues are, and then have to, in a methodical and organized fashion, utilizing the abilities of the lobbyists to point us in the right direction, is to make our case in Hartford. And that's basically, you know, when I asked Joe to do this presentation, you know, I asked him, don't put numbers in here, because I think the dialogue, as Warren was saying and some other people were saying, in terms of different approaches that we could do or concepts that we could utilize, brings us together a little bit more as a relationship. But ultimately, the problem has to be solved by us going to Hartford, because we've been down this road before. Down last year, you know, we're saying the same thing. Warren is, you know, every year we have the presentation to the budget. Warren's always makes reference to the grand list, so we understand that. And we're saying that we need more money. But it has to stop sometime, and we have to make a case where we all make that case to Hartford and say, look, however it works, we know, I shouldn't say we know, it's unlikely that ECS formula is going to be changed. It's unfortunate that we lost the CJF case. However, it still doesn't stop us from going and making our case and literally demanding more money, and we have the issues and the reasons why. We can show why we need more money. Not that we're there with a plate in our hand like you're going around the church and say, you know, make a contribution, but we have driving forces that need us, that demand that we fund our kids and they're not shortchanged for education. So that's basically the purpose of this, is to get together as a city, you know, and understand our plight and our problems. You know, the city has its problems too, as Warren was saying, that they're getting shortchanged. We shouldn't be shortchanged. I'm not concerned about some other city or some other community. That may be a problem or an unfair statement, but I live in Danbury, and I think Danbury for too long of a period of time has been shortchanged. And only by us all getting together, or I truly feel, is that we will make a case. We may not make it this year, we may not make it next year, but I think over a period of time, we may make some inroad, we'll be able to mitigate this particular differential or gap and take some of the burden off the city. I mean, that's essentially what I thought, you know, is an idea that I have, or a philosophy that I have, and it was, you know, one of the reasons that we wanted a conversation. I think it's easier to do it this way than it was in a formal budget presentation where we go before the council. So constructive ideas are good. It may be that we have tunnel vision in terms of sometimes you're working on a project and you're only looking at it and somebody else says something because they look at it through a different lens and you say, gee, you know, that's a possibility.
So why don't we have Mr. Fox?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Mr. Ginelli is saying, I think you know, several people have come to me over the past several months, years, about, you know, what can we do to resolve this. Again, it's mostly a state funding issue. We're really being shortchanged, not just for education, but all around on the part of the state. You know, the answer I come back to people, and that's really the primary thing we need to work on in this room, because we as community leaders need to foster this, is there's a real lack of grassroots support or grassroots. You know, Mr. John makes a good point. We need to go to Hartford and make our case, but if there's 10 of us on a bus to Hartford, that's not going to solve anything. You know, we need hundreds or thousands of people to say we can't keep this situation going anymore. We need to be properly funded, and it's only with a group of that magnitude that anybody's going to listen. And I think to get that support, it's up to the people in this room, you know, the leaders of the city, to try and stoke that support. A lot of it's perception on the part of the people. And I was here 10 years ago on this side of the table, and the only time people came out was when you're going to cut freshman sports, you're going to cut French, you're going to cut the gifted program, cetera, et cetera. This room was full, the city council chamber was full, everybody was full, and the papers, when we had paper, that was the story. Because my program is cut, everyone's out. Now we're talking about, well, you know, my kid's not getting the math coaching he needs, or my class size is 30 instead of 20, so I get less attention. The average parent is not engaged in that discussion. While it may be nice to have, really it isn't. It's not affecting me directly, even though it is. The perception's not there, so they're not here. There's 5 people sitting in the audience here. People need to understand that my kid is not, you know, my gifted child was not served properly because the gifted program was cut, which is what happened. You know, my kid's not getting this because my class size was greater, my teacher didn't pay attention to me, my grades suffered, and now I didn't get into the college I wanted. That's what parents need to hear for the long-term situation to be rectified, because without these thousands of people, we're going to sit here 10 years from now, and the situation is going to be that much worse.
I'm proud of the board not putting those comments out to parents and kids and wedging folks and saying, if you don't get this, we're going to eliminate X. The band, of course. Because that is a 360 education for our youngsters, and it's vital for them for, you know, post-secondary pathways to college or career. So we've avoided that scene. But you're right, what I'm beginning to hear now, and that's what I was trying to say before to you, is that we're getting more referrals to SPED and other things because they can't get the support day by day, and parents are advocating for it, and you know, and that's how it's operationalizing. So we're trying to mitigate that, which has been a real challenge for us. So I need to go on record saying that we have not taken that approach. We tried to do the pay but play, all of that. So we haven't gone down that.
I'm not suggesting stoke
No,
up
I just.
But I think in terms of relating general education shortfall is affecting all students, including my student,
right now,
because they're not getting services every student needs. Not
Not
track teams getting cut, and they're cutting
you
know, the gifted program.
That's right.
It should be we're funded. We don't have as many teachers as we need, so everybody's kid is suffering equally. And so then they all need to come out. I think that's the approach.
That's exactly part of it, because the focus isn't on freshman sports. So you have that specific group that comes out, and it's so hard to explain to people about going to Hartford and complaining about unfunded mandates. I mean, there's millions of dollars in unfunded mandates that if they wouldn't have to give us a dime, just take that weight off of us. But how do you go out and explain to everybody in the town that they've got to get on a bus and drive up to Hartford and complain about unfunded mandates? It's not going to happen.
Well, one of the things we have to watch out for here, because I think everybody, whether it's the city council and the city side or educational side, that we don't divide the community into this is the educational group, this is the government group. No. We're all in the same bucket here. And we all, if the city has the available funds, obviously, our highest priority has always been the education and to divert funds in that direction. But when we're cut down altogether, and the city, the cupboard's bare, there isn't any money there, we all lose. Everybody loses. But not one of these things where we divide the community or divide groups within the educational system where you have, I'm only worried about the sports. I don't care about the academic side of it all or anything like that. It's got to be a united front. We did hire a lobbyist who I think helped somewhat, and it was worth the investment. So
I would agree on that last statement a lot. I think it's helped a lot.
In which way, by the way? I'm maybe not that well informed. Okay.
The lobbyist?
In which way?
No, he's helped us a lot. I think we have much more of a connection to Hartford. I think even a lot of the state reps will tell you it's a common point. Ryan's up there every day on the ground. If we need to get something done or in contact with someone, the legislators will check in with him. We'll push stuff through him for, he'll pull our lottery numbers, for example, to testify tomorrow, so we'll get on the docket to testify. There's a lot of pieces. He tracks bills for us that in reality probably might, because we don't sit here all day long and track any bills. That it's not on our purview every day.
Okay,
so
he's doing what he's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and I think
I remember in the past, I think we had a similar situation and maybe the person wasn't doing it.
Yeah, the city, I mean,
That's why I
it's a
asked
split
the
cost. It's 15,000 aside, 15 city, 15 board, and I think it's a common point that we can all get to, both the state rep side and the school and the city side. It's a common point up there that represents us all the time, which I think is a good thing. We've got,
Yeah,
you know,
you got us in front of some,
Ben Barnes had an OPM. I mean,
where we
you
got
know,
to sit down like now and tell our story anecdotally, which is really important for them to
I
hear.
think he paid the salary.
Yeah, and, you know, and it tells a story to each person up there all the time. So yeah, Ben Barnes met with him, but again, the Danbury story is told repeatedly up there, and I never say it's a bad thing.
And can I, 1 second quick, I just want to get the quick question in the back.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry if this, I'm new here, I'm a parent of a second grader and soon to be kindergartner. So I'm very concerned about the larger class sizes, obviously as most parents are. And then I heard you talking about insurance, you're talking about health insurance. What is the average cost per teacher for health insurance? Do you know?
The average
year.
single plan is approximately 10,000, and a family is about 25,000.
And
District all-in cost, not employees, but just actual all cost.
And is there an opt-out option, incentive for teachers?
No, there's not an opt-out incentive.
Yeah.
Because could that be like?
Well, we can't go into a full discussion
Yeah.
if they had a
Yeah.
quick question,
Yeah.
but if you want to come back and ask that
Yeah.
or write it down and we'll get back to you on it.
Okay.
Thank you. And that's, hold it, go ahead.
Along the lines of what Warren was saying earlier in terms of us, working together and not separating, into two different groups, the education group, the government group. In past years, I've heard the comment many times from parents that they heard from somebody on the Board of Ed or in the administration that their budget was cut this year. And we always look at it, if it was more than last year,
It increased.
it increased.
Right.
That, in and of itself, pits education against the city. And I think you need to know that. We hear that quite often.
Oh,
And
yeah, I think
that
what
it's
happens
the wrong
is that,
information.
right, I think they go by, these are our fixed costs, so like this year, it's gonna cost, the fixed cost, nothing in, it's gonna be $4.7 million. We're, if we get 2.3, it's more than last year, but we have to make a cut. We have to take people out. We have to, when you tell somebody we got to lay you off because we got an increase, it doesn't seem like it makes sense. And not that I don't go around telling people that we got a cut, that
I'm
we
talking
just
about
maybe
public meetings where people speak and the message is our budget got cut.
Yeah.
And I'm an accountant, so I'm a numbers guy. When I see a number go from here to here and it's a higher number, that's not a cut.
Right.
So I just think, again, I think it's a bad message, especially one in terms of we're trying to work together and not work against each other.
I don't think
I don't
that
think it's
anybody on the
a
board actually says that. The public does, but.
No, I'm talking about, this is from board members and
Oh,
administrators.
I haven't
This
heard
has
anybody
been
say
heard.
that, but I have heard people say that they didn't get quite as much as that, as what we needed.
But I mean, I think also I don't know if this was partly addressed to me or not. I mean, I was the one that wrote that article in the newspaper regarding, what we've been shortchanged from the city and all that. And the point with that, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for coming here and, allowing us to engage in this dialogue. But over the years, the budget in terms of what the Board of Ed has needed in terms of what they've received has not kept pace. And if we were looking for what the state is shortchanging us, we would be proposing an increase to the city of $45 million. And clearly we're not doing that because that's just not possible. But the point is, there was a point in time where the Board of Education budget as a percentage of the city budget was at a certain rate. It was roughly around 55%. And over the years, the Board of Education budget as a percentage of the city budget has decreased down around 51%. And so the point is that not necessarily to attack the city, because there are other ways that the city does help us out, outside the Board of Ed budget. But the point is that the city budget has been increasing, the city side of the budget without education has been increasing at a higher rate than the Board of Ed budget. And that was the point, and if my comments were the ones that you were referring to, which that was the point that I was trying to make And it's one of those things that, our backs are against the wall, and we're really trying to look out for what's best for our students. I mean, the CJEF case has been going on for 15 years. We've been advocating at the state level for more money. We're going to continue to advocate at the state level for more money. There's no doubt about that, because the city is never going to be able to make us whole without some revolutionary change in the state economics and the city economics. But for right now, the city needs more resources, and that's for our students now, because if we have to wait another 15 years for the state to pony up what they need to pony up, our kids are already going to have graduated by then. They've already been detrimented, and we're dealing with a new wave of students coming in. So that's really the point of it. And it's not to attack the city. We do need to work together. And I think, Dr. Sal and the administration, before I, joined the board, they've been doing their part to work with the city and to accomplish those goals. And, they've been sharing contracts in terms of bidding for, fuel and propane for the buses and, different things. And the administration's been cutting a lot of costs, in terms of, if you look at, for example, the administration cost per pupil, we're 30% below what the state average is. And that's because, the Board of Ed has given, the district the directive, like, hey, look, we need to keep teachers in front of our students, keep, class sizes down as much as possible. And so where we've made cuts in support and, tutors and paraprofessionals.
Mm-hmm.
We've made cuts in terms of, the administration in the building. And, it's really, it's been tough. And, we really want to work with the city and to make sure and ensure that our students are getting the best education that we can give them. And to your point earlier, Mr. Lee, regarding the, technology and distance learning and all that stuff, again, I participated in conferences where, there are districts around the country that are rolling out this kind of stuff. And, it's tough. We would love to roll out, the sort of technology in our schools that they have around the country. And it's just, mostly because of the state's, fault, we haven't been able to do that. And we're dealing with just, trying to give kids the bare minimum education. And that's not fair to them. That's not fair to the parents. It's not fair to the community, because, the kids that are coming through our schools are the ones that hopefully stay around Danbury and contribute to our community. And, that's what I'm not trying to attack the city, and we're really trying to work with you all and to see what we can get done to help our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Sal, has there been any thought, or let me ask the first question. If we're not able to give you the full funding, or the state isn't able to help us out and get the full funding, have you worked on a plan already, or is that going to take place after the fact?
Yeah, until we know what we're dealing with, I don't want to create a turmoil in the district by making any rash statements. So I think when we understand what our parameters are and we're told what it is, then we'll start thinking about what's best for our kids and what we need to do. So from that standpoint, that's how I thought we should handle it.
But this was the first year that our kids saw actual cuts, less people in the classroom. We lost, I think, 25 paraprofessionals in the classroom, half of our reading and math coaches, and I'm going to explain this all to the Appropriations Committee tomorrow. It's having a real effect on our kids. I'm volunteering every day. I don't even have a kindergartner, but I'm helping the kindergartners just with basic phonics that the paraprofessionals were giving these small group instructions to these kids. And a strong economy is through strong public schools, and I think we could be doing more for our kids. And Warren, I don't mean any disrespect, but I don't know if the numbers that you have with this 80% is actual. I was at a meeting just last night at King Street School and a presentation by the Connecticut School Finance Project that the numbers came up to be like 70% that the city was
You might be
contributing.
right. I can tell you exactly what the numbers are.
Okay.
But actually, Danbury, state money, as it sits now, is of the 12,738.28 that we get in total, the state money is $3,284 per student. And the local share is $8,897 per student. That's the numbers I'm currently working with.
Yeah.
And from Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, I have the numbers as far as what the school board the governor has asked for.
The new numbers, you mean?
And those increases, and it actually, from our side, the grants for projects and what have you in 2019 are $1,726,000, and it's proposed to be zero. So the city will lose almost $2 million right there.
And the board's supposed to gain, so
Okay.
it's a
So it's all coming out of the same
bucket.
but we're going downhill fast, and we're trying to keep the Board of Education, or the thing afloat, okay, but we're taking some pretty good hits here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've taken some good hits this year too, and I think you're gonna see more parents that come out and express their concern for the lack of basic education.
I mean, we're certainly not here trying to pit us against you guys. I think it's just a matter of, we're kind of scrambling around because we have a big hole to fill, and we just don't know how we're going to do it, because to be honest with you, maybe what Irving said, if we could get 10,000 people on a bus and head up and spend a lot of time organizing up in Hartford and maybe squeeze a few million out of them, it would make a big difference. But we won't be able to fill, if we get less than what we're asking for, we won't be able to backfill any of these positions that we've lost already, and we'll probably wind up losing more, which will be bad.
There's always the tolls in the highway if we have to go there.
We'll start putting the tolls in Danbury. That's just meter parking.
No, it'll put a lot cost. One more if I may.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Again, and if I'm in the wrong area here, just tell me to be quiet. Has there been any thought to a regionalization, like Region 9 or 15 or whatever?
We've talked with local superintendents, we're in our third meeting now, about what we can regionalize regarding space and support and transportation, but not the governance part of it, just the utilization of how we can save money if we bid out together, if we have a facility, for example, that is not filled, that's contiguous to us, can we use it for providing services for low incident students in special education and combine ourselves? So we're looking to regionalize things like that with surrounding districts. But from a governance point of view, about saying, this region ought to go to a county system, and we haven't had those are discussions that have to take place in Hartford.
Connecticut
We're just
as a
trying
state.
to find ways of saving money.
Connecticut as a state is definitely not there, unfortunately.
One of the things I will go on record to say to you that, our challenge is even reducing resources. How do we move ahead? That may be not an issue for you guys, but it is for me in terms of making sure the district's moving forward. So we utilize grants to fill gaps, to extend programs, to run programs of interventions, find some different leadership positions to support that. We take our Title I money this year. We used to have 6 schools that were Title I. Because our student population, that are needing free and reduced, had risen to a district average, it exceeded the benchmark. We made every elementary school a Title I school, so they all were able to get some other resources. That was a way for us to disperse money differently. So we're trying to constantly find, and they're doing things in those schools that we could not do out of the operation budget. Because the intent of Title I and some of the grants that we get, it says you can't supplant what you get from the town, and you have to build to close the achievement gap generally. So we find ways like that. And I need to come back to the blended learning thing. And maybe we have credit recovery at the high school for the past 6 years. We have students that are very close to getting a credit, and we provide them online learning. They're able to go through that. In a classroom, there's one teacher supervising. They may be on 15 to 20 courses, but they get the credit. They don't have to repeat the course. You add that up, that's a lot of FTEs. So we've been doing all of those things to save money. The best and for us, that's the blended learning that we've been providing. So our challenge administratively, how do we not just say, okay, you don't have money, so kids, you can't do this, and you can't do that. We try to figure out, okay, we don't have the cash, right? We need to do something. How do we get there from here? And that's been our attitude in trying to cobble things together. And not criticize the town or anyone to say that you're not giving it to us, but how do we find ways to increase what we can give our kids resource-wise?
If I may, how much of that $8 million is going to teachers' increases versus staffing?
The current 8.4 is primarily all staff inside that grant. The raises inside that grant are about $300,000 in the Alliance grant. So in that 8.4, one of the things we didn't address in the budget because we thought there was some increase in state funding is what I call the compression factor inside the grant. So inside the grant, raised in health is about $300,000. Because again, it's $8.4 million staff roughly, about $8 million total.
And that will be how many? I saw just some rough.
Total FTEs inside that grant right now, I want to say it's...
In the high school, for instance, I think I saw 2.
You mean in the new budget going forward?
Yeah.
New budget, new FTEs for high school are 5 FTEs new. Yeah, five new.
There was 2 special ed.
Yeah, 2 special ed.
ed at the high school.
Yeah.
And bilingual.
Yeah.
The graduation requirements went ahead to 25. We have to staff it, but we can staff it in a different way, but we're going to have to do some addition. Primarily, the one that we have to hire a health teacher. I'm sorry.
Correct.
Of course, that's a new requirement. We couldn't staff it at the current level. Then we have the SPED, and
We have currently 100 students that are approximately 100 students identified in the freshman academy as needing special education services, and we're, as of today, anticipating 130 to matriculate in as 9th graders. That's an increase of 30. Typically, we keep our caseloads about 20, for your typical resource teacher at that level, a little bit smaller in the lower levels. So just to that factor to provide appropriate services for our freshmen that are identified, we'll need at least 1 FTE. And then we've created an in-district program that has offset several out-of-district placements for our significantly disabled students, and those students have been housed for the past 3 years at one of our middle schools, and there are several of those students that are ready to matriculate to high school. So those students will need additional.
So you take that one FTEs and the aides that we have, I don't know, maybe it's 150, 60,000 versus the tuition of 5 or 6 kids at tune of $750,000 $1 million. So we have our own program. So we've been doing things like that to, one, it's better for our kids to be home with our own kids, but also save money. It's a good business model. It serves everyone very well. So we've been doing things like that. Busing, you've done some busing studies?
We've done the busing study, we've converted our fleet to propane, and we've done a lot of those.
Well, next year you're looking at going to 3 tiers so we don't increase.
We're having a consultant review our tiering structure now. See if there's additions.
I think we're trying to take the inside shots about what can we do to reduce and not expand. Use any money that we can towards kids and those kinds of activities.
Total FTEs inside the Alliance grant at 8.4, which goes towards all-day kindergarten and our ELL teachers, there's 82 FTEs inside that grant right.
Those are new?
No, that's current teachers.
That's in the grant.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's current.
Yeah, current.
So that's what's represented there.
Yeah.
Well, you get to high school that if just the grades progress, you're going to have 3,500, 3,600 kids. And right now, you're just staffed about at the maximum.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to handle, that's going to be another 9 to 12 FTEs just to handle the core experiences that kids are going to have in the next 5 years, just naturally.
And the way your high school's coming online with the addition, it's going to be a trickle of FTEs. You're probably looking five. You're going to add, but it's not a case you're on the west side where you have to have 25 teachers, full blown everything. So at least this way, thankfully, is an economical way to begin to build the growth into that school. That's one thing that I came up with.
Those buildings represent about $3.5 million on the debt service on the general budget of the city of Danbury, which is educational investment. So you got to remember, like I said, we pick up a number of things. I know we picked up maintenance around the facilities, a lot of that. So we picked up the city side a lot of to take the burden off the educational side.
The bonding piece, go ahead, you guys have. All the combined stuff that we've done with you guys has been a huge help. I mean, we'd really be in trouble without a lot of that.
Point of information, just so I can be better informed. Fred, you had alluded to it earlier, and Warren has always said this over the years, just that there's costs that are outside the budget that the city is involved with that relates to the school. And I just wondering how that calculation is done that talks about, that puts us in last place in terms of the amount that we put towards the student. So does the calculation include
Yes.
those additional costs that?
It does. What happens every year, we file what's called the ED-01. It's a financial report that goes to the state where that calculation is based off of. And what happens is we send a document over to the city. It's called Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 in-kind services. So all your maintenance staff, all those salaries get captured in the Board of Ed budget, including any bond finance use. So all those pieces get looped into that $12,750 that is your net per pupil. So it does capture those. Because boards across, some boards have maintenance in their budgets, some don't. So that's where all that in-kind stuff gets picked up. Some schools have no in-kind from their cities. We do. So yeah, those costs do get associated over and captured. Yeah, so it is inside that number.
Can I also just add to that too, because I believe I just learned through the fiscal finance project that that particular formula will be changing. I think it's being piloted now with 9 different districts.
Correct. There's a whole new formula that's happening this coming year.
But I think in regards to what John is saying, that it will help. I think you'll see more of an itemized format as opposed to things just kind of being bucketed. Correct?
Yeah.
That might help with that sort of transparency.
Yeah, it takes the current. The budget that we present and use is detailed. The state rolls up a lot of the numbers and the salary stuff into buckets. And the new report, which we're just starting to pilot now, will break that formula down deeper.
But the point being, the snow removal, the maintenance.
Yeah, all that's
part of
captured.
that
Yeah, all that's captured. Sean Hanley, the folks at Public Buildings, there's a percentage of their salaries that slide over into our budgets after they're servicing our schools, all those sorts of things.
But the real number is going to, as our enrollment grows, it keeps on getting hammered down because if
We're $40 less than last year.
Yeah.
I mean, just because of that very.
Because of the
Because you're growing.
population. So we're not gonna, we're not gonna beat that number. if they-
No, you're not going to go up by 2,000 or 3,000 on the net per pupil. No, it's not going to shift that.
Well, that's, so you could get that number quickly, but multiply 2,000 times 11,000 students.
But I think in our presentation earlier in some of the public hearings we had, we were shortchanged about $50 million over a period of years, and we were hoping to get reimbursed that. but-
That was a CJEF case,
Yeah.
$54 million.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and what they've done, they've taken the alliance money and they've made that part of ECS money to the municipalities.
Yeah.
You know, and that was a way of just increasing ECS, and they did, they put it in our ECS money to the town. That's the way they remedied that part. They're still $24 million short to get us to where we think we need to, 30 million.
And in just the last point, in the Alliance grant, I mean, of the things that inside that grant, like one of them is all-day kindergarten. Right now, today, there's 2 districts in the state that aren't an all-day cat. So I mean, it's not a case of some decisions the board made with those funds were, I'll call it glitzy. I mean, all-day K now is a foundation of every school district across the state. I want to say, I think there's 2. I forget the exact number, but I think it's that field that don't have all-day.
Well, no city.
Yeah, no city does not have one.
We continue looking for grants. We used to have a grant writer, but it wasn't productive. So now Ann, thank you, Ann, back there, she's been bringing money, that behind the scenes money you don't see in terms of supporting families and kids, which is vital for our preschool kids, and that's made a difference in things that we've done. There isn't a lot of money coming to us from organizations to pay for people, quite frankly. It's generally the do things programs. We need help with more than just brick and mortars or software. We need help with people, hands-on kinds of folks.
I just got curious, I know that my wife got a huge grant from IBM on laptops, and they were more than happy to give them a slew of them, hundreds, in her program. Do we get any free software hardware from laptops or anything like that from me?
No, not generally. GE gave us a grant a while back, but it was small. It covered some stuff at the high school, more for like after-school salaries, I think, or something like that. IBM's been not as giving as they were. Other districts got, like IBM would kind of hang the sign on the door and be a whole computer lab donated, but we haven't seen too much of that lately. Yeah, those were big. We have not seen much of that lately. Even some of the other, like Bowringer gave a couple $1,000 for the STEM buses a couple of years ago. I mean, those have been, they come in, but they're very specific to just pay for specific things. They're not very, very like a broad brush, donation.
The last 2 years or 3 years, we took the Alliance money specialized bond issuance for improvement.
Oh, yeah, that was $1.8 million, and we dumped a ton of cash into the schools. I call it not brick and mortar, but in a sense renovation and mortar. I mean, we did a lot of new turf at West End, so the playground work and that kind of stuff.
Things that didn't impact the town.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at the one where we could probably purchase some hardware.
Yeah, well, actually, we're going to pay for the tennis courts at the high school. There's $500,000 there. The board's going to use that grant to refurb the high school tennis.
So that goes back to the study we talked about before. I think we find ways to work together as best we can, meaningfully, and we do return money back to the town, which now has been going into our insurance grant. But bonds like this, we've been helping each other as best we can. It's just that, it just ain't enough money.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's just ain't enough money.
Ingersoll Automotive, Mrs. Cooper's reminded me, Ingersoll Automotive has stepped up, and we get about 30 plus laptops every year from them at high school.
That's right.
They really, that's a continuing program.
And that's been for 4 years, so that's 130 computers they've given us, right?
Ingersoll Automotive, they donate laptops to this high school every year, at least 30, all the time, every
We
year.
also have many teachers that are doing donors' shoes, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
even though
they
you
go
have
find
1 or 2 classroom teachers that are getting 5, 6, 7 laptops, I mean, you have easily, I would say, 40, 50 teachers over the last year or two that have been getting, small amounts of technology, but you add that up over time, and it equals big numbers.
Ray Dalio, who has a large endowment fund, will just go on to the GoFundMe sites and just blanket buy a couple $100,000 worth of teacher resources and just pick them up.
Put in for 4 or 5 for their classroom, but it does add up over time. There's just an extra way. In my department, for instance, in special ed, we've had things funded like sensory rooms for kids. So for kids that have needs outside the classroom, a time and space to go to calm down, cool down, those types of things, fully funded in multiple buildings. So I mean, those little things that kind of offset some of the costs, but teachers are taking their own time and kind of energy to put into those outside the school day to kind of make up for some of the things that we wouldn't be able to provide otherwise.
Yes, sir.
Special ed, what is the cost of that? What's that running us now? And, like per pupil or how many students?
Per pupil are usually 4 times your current per pupil site, say, 50,000 a student or so, approximately. Outplace could be 100,000 plus. They're unanticipated. They just literally just show up. Your total sped budget is about 22% of your overall budget, I would say. I could tell you. I want to say it's give or take. I think it's about 23% last time I looked. Your current special ed budget is $25 million. So not quite actually. Let's see if I got this. About 22% or so. Yeah.
Do we know how many students that were released?
Yeah, so you have just under 1,500 students in special education that are receiving.
1,500?
1,500, yes. So you're currently representing just under 13% of our total population. It's a large department. One of the, the most significant changes that I've seen, I think the best thing we've done is provided in-district programming and creating programs to keep kids in district. Keep them in our community, be able to educate them by our teachers and staff. Our out-of-district placements still remain low. Roughly 45 currently out of those 1,500 students, so not a large percentage of that population. And I can honestly say that those students, we have deemed that they need something other than what we can provide them. The part that has been particularly difficult is some of our DCF placed kids. As I'm sure you're well aware, we have 2 group homes in Danbury, and we frequently get students that are both identified as special education and usually in the guardianship of DCF that are deemed no nexus students. And when they come into our city, we assume the educational responsibility for them, including any of the costs associated with that. Frequently, those students have educational needs that are, in out-of-district programs, and they are done we find out about them throughout the school year. Sometimes there's several students across the school year, sometimes there's less, sometimes more. So those are those unanticipated costs that we come into quite frequently and regularly in special education. Speaking to the lobbyist, the lobbyist piece, one of the things that has been helpful for me is with some of the new legislation with special education, the independent educational evaluations, the coalition or collaborative to pool resources. Many of those things I've been able to either speak on behalf or send in testimony to speak to those things and the specific impact that it would have on Danbury. One of the biggest things is that excess cost in any way that additional resources could be supported to the district with those funds.
They're all from the district, Danbury area?
All Danbury students.
But we have kids that move into DCF and that come from other towns that we wind up.
The no-nexus kids are essentially students that are in the care or custody of DCF. And typically speaking, they don't have parents or guardians, so they don't have a district of residence or a home district, because the district of fiscal responsibility is where the parents reside. So if DCF assumes guardianship of a kid, let's say parent rights are terminated, they don't know the location of parents. If those kids are then placed in a group home in Danbury or in a foster home in Danbury, Danbury then becomes the nexus and assumes the fiscal responsibility. Many of these students have very tragic stories and situations and things, and the cost to educate them is more. And I think the difficult piece is that unanticipated piece with that. The other thing that we've seen that has impacted your special education budget is some of any time a student is placed into a youth detention facility, a mental health facility, any of those types of things, we also assume the educational responsibility for them during that time. And again, those can be they fluctuate across the year, they're not anticipated. And so that is something else that makes it very, very difficult in the special education budget to plan for.
See, our identification rate is lower than the national
Lower
average.
than the state average, yeah.
And the state average, and particularly for cities, so, which means that the accommodations be made in the classroom. SRBI, or there's an intervention system we're required to do with students. It used to be where kids need to be, before you give them help, they have to be identified. Now there's what we're calling an SRBI model, or an intervention model, that has different tiers to it. The problem that we're having is that the first 2 tiers, if you're in my classroom, I'm going to work with you to accommodate. But at some point, before I make that recommendation for, let's say, full assessment testing, or to qualify you for a much more expensive program, the kids may need, just because they just have gaps in their learning, they need some specialized teaching. And we have what we call a tier 3. We don't have enough staff to do tier 3. The people that we cut, that you're talking about, used to do the tier 3. See, and we don't realize that. And what happens is, that's what happens. If we could, if we're able to fund that, then, the kids can be integrated back into the mainstream, totally, without being, referred for special ed, put a label on them, just so they can get some more time with phonics and other intervention with a specialist. We don't need to go there. But that's the unforeseen things that the general public doesn't see. You can't see that unless you know and you live in the schools. And that's why the teachers, quite frankly, showed up at the board meeting, pulling out their hair.
Yep.
Saying, you got to help us out. You got 28, 29, I'm trying to do the SRBIs, and then when they put them to help someone, there's no one there. So what do? They make the special ed reference.
We've seen
And now we're into a whole system of identification and programming, which is very expensive, and sometimes, in my view, not the best and not appropriate for kids. They shouldn't be doing that. So that's the dilemma that we're facing.
We've seen a significant increase in parent referrals, even district referrals for special education services, and I think a big piece of that is that we don't have anything else to offer. So I'm a classroom teacher in 3rd grade that has 29 kids sitting in front of me, and this kid needs help with phonics or with mathematics, and I can't provide that. So the avenue, because we don't have those intervention services for them, is to get that service through special education, which I do share Sal's concern. I mean, special education is appropriate for many kids, but not for all. And if we can't provide an intervention that could prevent the kid from necessarily needing services, and that would be the goal through that SRBI, the liability of the district, the cost of the district, all of that is increased. So while it may be an immediate savings, I think the long-term kind of impact, you look back over our special education rates over the past 2 years, we've increased by a full percent. That's significant. We're still below the state average, but we've increased significantly. So I just, that's just a piece for advocating for my department.
Well, if we stay at our present staffing, that number's gonna keep increasing, I would assume.
I would.
If we don't bring back some paras and intervention.
I think just the natural, I think two things. I think the natural increase in our total student body, I would anticipate the special education rate to increase. But I do think the rate at which it increases will be more significant the more cuts and drawbacks from the intervention services we make.
And that's why we use title money. We try to have these interventions for it. In fact, we're going to have a presentation tomorrow, and we're going to read 180 and math money. It's 3 new programs that we've been able to, reduce the grade level differences that teachers are dealing with in their classrooms, because kids can't read and comprehend. And we have those programs, and usually we fund them through specialized grants and things of that nature. But we need to sustain that stuff. And when I go up to Hartford, that's what I talk about. We don't have sustainability. We could have it this year for your kid, but guess what? We might not have it next year. And we guess we have French this year, but we might not have it next year. It's just not right. You don't hear that kind of conversation, generally speaking, in your surrounding areas. That doesn't begrudge them, but they don't have to experience that. We do.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have?
Just a question, I was wondering how we're doing in the magnet school as far as funding and so forth, and
They cut us last week by 8%, so we lost about 150,000. That grant's been cut the last 2 years, so that continues. We continue to see a downward return on that grant.
And we're losing.
And we're losing kids.
Out-of-town kids.
The out-of-town kids are no longer coming because their enrollments are dropping. So you've got like Newtown elected, I think that they forego a couple seats this last lottery, so we're seeing those numbers.
But we still get how much in total, which the taxpayers have to pay for?
We still get, I haven't recount, about $1.7 million right now on that plan. So it does pay for a chunk of the school. Now, that school is built for free by state money, not free, but state bonding. And obviously we do get about, I'd say 56% of the costs are bear by the state.
What was the cut, Joe, that they made?
7.5% in the magnet grant, or approximately $150,000. Current year, and that's literally 2 weeks ago, we had an email from the state. Good news, we were going to cut you 15%, we only cut you 7.5%. So I guess we're supposed to be happy.
It's like a bonus. But we will continue to run into a problem if the out-of-town people don't come in, that changes, we won't get the funding.
Change the formula.
Yeah, the formula changes.
Wasn't that magnet school supposed to handle the bubble that was going to go through?
Yeah. I mean,
That's the trouble, it wasn't a bubble.
Yeah, no, it was more of a,
it's a much bigger bubble.
Steady bubble. With all that said, we have a great school system in a lot of ways, and I believe that firmly. If you want to visit anytime, give me a buzz. We'll go and look. Take a look at what's going on in the classrooms. The teachers are incredibly dedicated. The elementary, what we're talking about here, they're able to hide. It's almost like Bill's at home with kids, right? But the folks, they're doing a great job. I always say that. We're very fortunate to have the passion that we have with the people that we have. So you're welcome to visit anytime. Please do.
And to Dr. Sal's point, that same thread, to Warren's point too, we do have a good work relationship with the city and the council. I mean, the board does. I mean, there is always an open dialogue. I mean, myself and David work closely. The mayor, Dr. Sal, we do meet. So it's not a case of one side doesn't know what's going on the other anymore. I think, unfortunately, we're collectively suffering through the state cuts. I will say that. And I feel like this whole last 6 months we've been in cost mitigation and cutting. It's just been shuffling on what's been cutting and leaving. So.
We try, and we will continue to try. The council's educational committee, which I chair again, we'll do the best we can. It's difficult times, we know that, but I don't want to break a partnership that seems to have worked well. I know sometimes it's very tense, everybody's very passionate about their cause, but it's tough for all of us, including the taxpayers, which we all want to protect in every way, and that means provide a good education for the children.
Most of us are in that boat. It's a difficult spot to be in. You don't want to sit here and come in and say, you know, like my wife and I were talking, I said, go see if you can rally up a big group of people to come out there and go into the city council and scream that they want to have their taxes increased so they can send more money to the schools. You're not going to find a lot of those people out there.
Well, my children went through the Danbury school system and went on to higher education, and it was a good experience, and we're proud of it. So
Yep.
we have a good cool school system. When you look around to some of the others, some people come here to Danbury just to take advantage of the programs that are available. So.
Yep, you do. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody coming.
Joe, you gonna turn on?
Yeah.